change. Na 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 na. Ooh, ooh, na 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 na. Thank you. That's it. Looking in the mirror, making the change. Well, I missed you all. Thank you. It's a great journey. I hope you enjoyed your last couple weeks. So from 1987 till 1991, Annie Kirkwood received downloaded messages from Mother Mary. I happened to pick up her book in 1991, and if you're like me, sometimes I can pick up a book a couple months later and it feels like it's new. Anybody have that experience lately? Yeah. But for some reason, that book in 1991 still stuck with me, and it's come back to my mind because it feels very timely. In that book, she was it was a combination of all the apparitions of Mary that had been happening around the world in Fatima and Lourdes and Medjugorje and Texas and Georgia and all these places where Mary was appearing to people. I even had some friends who experienced some things in Georgia in a group. And some of the messages that were coming through were similar. And so what was coming to Annie then was written down. And Mary's messages were pretty dire about an era of natural disasters that would come upon the earth as Mother Earth did her best to heal herself. And Mary's message, of course, was hopeful too, that we could awaken to the love of God in our hearts and make a difference, change the course of our direction. Interestingly, Annie, the author, lives in Lubbock, Texas, which is one of the places that was recently flooded pretty well. And I'm wondering about her well-being, and of course we all are wondering about each other's well-being right now, aren't we? Those we know or know of, and even just knowing brothers and sisters, are in difficult places right now. Whether it be a natural disaster or an experience of violence or otherness or so on. You know, I don't need to name all the craziness that's going on in our world right now. And yet it does seem like we are in a time that is riddled with some difficulty. And so, what then? Well, Mary, how about you send us a savior? Oh yeah, we tried that already. Because the truth is, no one can save us. We can have great, wise teachers, and we do, and we have continued to through the years that can point the way. And certainly we can have realized beings like Jesus who broke through to a whole new level of consciousness for humanity. And so if you want to call that saving, that is a way, but it doesn't save us if we don't follow. So, you know, it's kind of like, I think of the football teams that go through the hoops, you know, when they start the game. And so the first player breaks through the hoop, and then the rest of the team follows suit through that portal onto the field with great enthusiasm and spirit and ready to do this and teamwork. You know that experience that you've seen before? To me, I think of Jesus as the one who broke through the hoop first. And the rest of the team has to follow through and get onto the field that is earth and maintain the field that is earth in order to play the game. And it's not a competition so much as it is a realization that we're all on the same team. So this is kind of what is offered to us by realized beings such as Jesus. Today we're starting a new fall series on sacred activism, and it's based on the book by Andrew Harvey called The Hope, A Guide to Sacred Activism. It's interesting, he wrote it in 2009, and it feels like he wrote it for today. I see a lot of you nodding, so some of you are reading it and seeing that, or have read it. And so what is this sacred activism thing, and what is a sacred activist? A sacred activist is somebody who is in the business of healing and helping all of us heal. A sacred activist is somebody who grieves what is lost in ignorance in our world and is looking full on at what's going on in our world, but then quickly also looking toward the vision and the possibility and moving in that direction. So through healing and restoration and service and a groundedness in spirit. It's a combination of those two, compassionate acts and prayerful inner work. And so sacred activism then is that combination in action in the world. It's a marriage between our inner spiritual practice and our outer acts for the world, on behalf of the world, on behalf of this healing and restoration. In chapter 4 of the book, Andrew Harvey talks about a personal experience that he had with a really powerful being in our recent history, a contemporary, really, Father Beatty Griffiths. He was a Benedictine monk, British-born, but he spent a lot of his time in southern India and became a yogi who fused Christianity and Hinduism together and really became a being that was transfiguring into full divinity. So he was a really powerful presence on the earth, and Andrew was working on a documentary on his life, and so he spent some personal time with him. And in the early 90s, Father Beatty said to Andrew, "You know, Andrew, we're living in the hour of God." And Andrew said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "We're in the time of choice." That was in the early 90s. It's getting riper and riper. The choice is getting, in some ways, more urgent. Will we be on the path of destruction, or will we be on the path of rebirth and resurrection? And so the choices continue to be in front of us, living in that hour of God. But in the midst of what seems like doom and gloom, there is a mystical renaissance. And what is that mystical renaissance but a time when the monks and the nuns and the sages and the saints come out of the temples and the caves and down from the mountaintops and into the milieu of mainstream life and the marketplace. And with that come the teachings of the mystics and the scriptures of the world in all the different languages of the world, and the boom of the technology and the internet that gives us access to these teachings and teachers and scriptures of the world. All those deep, at one time, secret mystical teachings are available to all of us. And so part of the mystical renaissance is the availability of this great world of teachings that we have available to us, and also the spiritual work that we do inside. But also a part of this renaissance then is those who have been on the front lines of social justice and ecological sustainability and these kinds of issues as activists are also waking up to the fact that if you're only running on human energy, you must turn to a greater source that can revive that energy and replenish that energy for the service and the work that is being done in the world. And so many of those activists are now turning to more grounded spiritual practices. So now there's kind of a both and amongst the people of the world, the activists and the mystics, if you will, coming together in a marriage, and for the parts of us that are in compassionate acts of service, and the parts of us that are in doing the inner work, recognizing where the balance and the blend is to make sacred activism a real part of what can rebirth, be a part of this mystical renaissance, this rebirth, this healing and restoration of our world. So we're all needed, in other words, and both parts are needed. You know, sometimes in activism there can be some righteous judgment, and some of that could fall away with more of the spiritual practice. And sometimes those of us who have been steeped in spiritual practice have been after that transcendent, enlightened nirvana bliss experience. But those of us who have tasted some of that recognize that you don't just hang out there, that then right back down into the earth and all that is going on around us is the other part of that enlightenment, a very important part of the enlightenment, And the key thing that is being called forth now from those yogis and mystics and sages here in this room, to bring forth that, to, for so many years, we used to joke when I was in ministerial school that silent unity should stop being silent. And part of that is a truth for us today, isn't it? We've got this best kept secret in some ways that continues to be a secret, and we have these quiet lives of spirituality, which are fantastic. And the world out there is hungry for what we've got to offer. And so we can offer that through our compassionate acts of service. We can offer that by showing up in the world, ready for whatever comes, grounded in that kind of space and energy that is familiar to us, that brings us personally a sense of stability and confidence and strength and awe. And then now, sharing it. Anybody feel like they're on that edge where they're being called to share more of the spiritual gems that you have found within? Yeah. So an interesting thing happened on the earth in 1945 in two places. Very distinct kinds of activities were going on. We could probably find that in every year. But in 1945, these seemed like big world events. One thing that happened was the U.S. bombed Japan, Nagasaki and Hiroshima, with nuclear bombs. And the other thing is that in northern Egypt, in Nag Hammadi, in a dark cave was unearthed the Gnostic Gospels. Gospels that were kept out of the Orthodox Church and the Bible, that were now seen as a whole different set of teachings, known to some as more secret teachings that Jesus had given more directly to his own disciples. So there's a Gospel of Mary Magdalene, and there's a Gospel of Philip, and a Gospel of Thomas, and so on. And in these Gospels, the Gnostic idea is self-knowledge. So there's a different kind of path, in some ways ones that we will in unity find a really nice match for. In the Gospel of Thomas, there's this short, pithy Savior message. But this is how this Savior message goes. If you bring forth what is within you will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you. Pretty direct. And I believe that's what's meant by the hour of God. The hour of God is upon us to bring forth what we know, what we've learned, what we can share with the world of the sense of the beloved and the uniting with that beloved energy, with that divine love. And to bring that forth into the world, to share that, will save us, ourselves individually, and allow maybe others to awaken to that path to save themselves as well. But if we keep it quiet, if we keep it to ourselves, if we keep it silent, there's sort of an imploding possibility here. So what will it take? What will it take for us to really usher in this mystical renaissance? Well, one of the things I've talked about is our spiritual practices, and we always go back to those spiritual practices that once again connect us with spirit, that ground us in that energy, that allow us to not be bowled over by the things going on in life. I want to invite you to do an exercise that I learned through the conference I was at. I got introduced to so many amazing people, and one of them was Reverend Angel Kyoto Williams, who's a Buddhist teacher and activist. And I looked into her teachings a little bit more and learned this exercise. I'm going to adapt it for us a little bit, but I want to invite you to do this exercise. So to do it, you would need to stand and to find a partner. And everybody doesn't need to do it. If you don't want to do it, you don't need to. But if you'd like to, I invite you to participate. Okay, you want to stand side by side, shoulder to shoulder. Side by side rather than facing one another. And then if the person who has shorter hair would place their hand on the other person's shoulder, just on the side of the shoulder, like here. And then what you're going to do is apply steady and slow pressure to that other person's shoulder. And when it's too much for the other person, when you're at your edge, you just nod your head, and that's when they're going to stop. So you're pushing, you're gently pushing, applying, and just nod when it's enough. Okay? Just take a few moments to notice how that feels. Okay, now let's start over. You can drop your hand. And now I want to invite the person with the longer hair to take a moment to close your eyes and feel your feet squarely on the ground. Get a sense of the energy of spirit that runs through your body, through your head and your heart. You can feel it opening up your shoulders and your chest. That energy of love and confidence and strength. And feel it as it runs through your body, down your legs and into the earth, and even up from the earth into the soles of your feet. Feel how strong you are, how supported you are by the spirit that animates your whole being. When you have a really good sense of that presence running through you and that energy running through you, and you are reminded once again of who you are, you might take a moment to put your energy back and breathe through your heart again, or even your solar plexus. In fact, let's take a nice big belly breath or two, allowing your belly to open, feeling the anchoring of that energy from the belly onto the earth. And once you feel a real connection with spirit, you can nod your head so your partner knows that you're ready. And once again, have the partner apply pressure, just as you did before, slow and steady, pushing until the one with shorter hair nods their head that they've had enough. The same exercise, basically. So keep pushing until the same partners, same activity, shorter hair pushing the other person. And when you've had enough, again, nod your head. Take a moment to notice how you feel. And when you're ready, you can thank your partner and sit down. So, I'd like to hear from a few of you. How did you feel the first time? Any thoughts or feelings, Ciel? Unsteady and weak. Okay. Anybody else? Feelings about the first time? Didn't feel it? Okay. Somebody else? Chiropractic adjustments have gone on here. And that was the first time? Okay. Okay, felt competitive the first time. Linda? Okay, so concerned about pushing back. Okay, let's hear one more. All right, so this might be good couples therapy. There's a lot more in this than I realized. Okay, and then how about on the other side? How about on the second time around? How did it feel? Annie?
I didn't brace myself, and I felt really solid, and I didn't feel the need to push back to make sure that I felt solid.
Felt solid. Okay. Anybody else? Yes. Love and compassion. Yeah?
Yeah, I strengthening me. I felt grounded and much stronger, and
Good.
there was nothing that could push me over.
That's it. Did you hear what she said? I felt grounded and strong, and I was in that spiritual energy, and I felt like nothing could push me over. That's it. Look how simple that was. How long did that take? 30 seconds for you to ground? And maybe even a minute? This is the kind of energy we need to move in the world. Otherwise, we will get bowled over by what's going on in the world. And you know there are a lot of people out there that are feeling bowled over, and now you have this very simple way that you can help them. Take a moment, breathe, connect with the God of your being, or no God at all, just the energy of love. Feel it move through your body, feel it go through the earth and up through the earth. Feel how strong you are and how able you are because you are connected to this ever-present source. Nothing can bowl us over. Nothing can push us over. Yeah. Without the pressure, you wouldn't know who you were, and without the pushing, we can't birth. That's why it's here. So even though it's hard, it's here. It's labor. And so we need both energies, the sacred masculine and the divine feminine. You know, we talk a lot about this as a rebirthing time for that divine feminine energy. And it's really, really, really important. And we have it all, male and female, within us, both feminine and masculine energies. But if you can think of the image of a father supporting a mother as she births, the divine feminine is birthing that new world. And the sacred masculine is holding the strength and the space and the protective energy. And we all have both of those energies in us. And so that is needed too. The pressure, the sense of I'm with you, and the pressure that says I'm pushing you into this difficult space. And there may be some pain, but I've talked to so many mothers that say, you know, maybe right after having the child for a minute, say, I don't know if I'm going to have another. And then that child is put in their arms and they take that child home and they start making plans for the next baby. And that's the way it is because the joy, the birth, the possibility, that's what we are at right now in our world. It's now a collective journey, maybe more than ever. So the spiritual journey for many of us in New Thought and Unity, we've been on this very personal spiritual journey. And it's not that we totally give that up because we still have our personal spiritual practice, but the collective has become imperative. And so the collective work, the pressure, the pressing on one another, the otherizing in a way, the other opinions, the diverse opinions, and the pressure that feels like is coming at us from these diverse opinions has to happen in order for the mystical renaissance to really happen. And so it is happening all for a reason. There is some reasons for all of it. When I talked about the divine feminine and divine masculine, you know, that they're both needed, and it's not about male and female, although we can see some outpicturing of how the divine feminine is sort of missing in the world or needing more of it in the world. How many of you have heard of Cesar Chavez? Yeah. How many of you have heard of Dolores Huerta? Okay, a lot fewer of you. Some of you have. You're from California, so more likely. If I took that question to the Midwest where I'm from, I bet nobody would have heard of Dolores Huerta because I had never heard of her until I heard her speak at a conference last week. And then I went and saw her movie that's out. Dolores Huerta was the co-founder of the movement with Cesar Chavez of the United Farm Workers. She and Cesar were absolutely together on everything they did. Complete co-founders. One without the other couldn't have had the movement. Both of them attested to that. Yet we all know Cesar Chavez. Why don't we know Dolores Huerta? The equality of our world is also being called forth. Part of it is the feminine. Part of it is equality for all people who have not really been acknowledged. And it's not about acknowledgement and recognition so much, but it is what teaches then our children of how our history really is and how we have created this amazing nation that we have, this now in some ways pained nation that we have. But still glorious part of the world and a key part of the mystical renaissance and the rebirth. So there's healing. You know, I was in a breakout group at this conference. The conference, by the way, was put on by the Shift Network, and it's something you might be interested in. It's going to happen every year. It's California 2020 Vision, and it's about visioning a California that works for all. And every year, these people from all these different disciplines come together. Spirituality and business and banking and politics and social justice and environmental sustainability, and all these different groups come together. Racial healing, indigenous peoples' rights, and conservatives and liberals and libertarians, and everybody's at the table. Everybody's invited to be a part from the ground up. Not a table that's already been set, but a ground-up experience. So it was really powerful. And I was sitting with this group of women. We had all decided that we wanted to work with racial healing and indigenous peoples healing. And it was I'd never met these people. And it was the most beautiful thing to sit with about 8 different women, Mexican and African American and white and different ages and different Middle Eastern and different backgrounds and religious backgrounds and ethnicities, but it was just one small round table. And to talk about healing and restoration of indigenous people and people who have been marginalized and oppressed in many ways. And right there in that dark, cold, because the air conditioning was too high, conference room felt like a rebirth was happening. Just in that small time of conversation. On the stage, when there was a libertarian and a conservative and a liberal talking about issues of the day in a living room style conversation, there was a rebirth of Renaissance happening right there. And all around the rooms and the places I could see were coming together with these various opinions and backgrounds was the key. Later that day, after feeling so fed by that small group of women, talking about racial healing and indigenous peoples, healing and restoration and forgiveness and atonement and that whole process. I saw a woman who had given a talk earlier in the day, and she had talked about being a Christian. And she was sitting by herself, and she was getting on the phone, and I asked her if she would come to dinner with some other like-minded new friends I had met that were in a spirituality breakout. And I intentionally wanted to invite her because I intentionally wanted to have a conversation with her, somebody who espoused to be an evangelical Christian and had different perspective than I do on spirituality and politics too, and the world in general. And we had this really rich conversation. And that's what it's going to take, is for us to get out of our comfort zone and our like-minded circles and invite new people in and go across town to new places and put yourself in places that you haven't been and listen to different perspectives and have the dialogues that we need to have. This is a big part of the mystical Renaissance. It's just conversations and grounding in spirituality and being of service. It's really quite that simple. So this embodied spirituality that is the mystical Renaissance, that is being a sacred activist, when we do that, it tends, when we really all the way go through the process of recognizing spirit, maybe having some glimpses of enlightenment, coming back down to earth, if you will, our hearts break. If we let ourselves fully go in to the process, our hearts break open. See, we all thought it was just about hanging out in bliss, didn't we? That's what we used to be after. The enlightened experience for the personal bliss. Maybe some of us anyway. But once we get there, we realize, oh no, it's to bring that bliss back into the world. And so we must let our hearts break open. We must look at what's going on in order to do that. That's part of the initiation as divine human beings. It's grace and grit, prayer and service. So where you notice maybe that you're not all the way in, so to speak, the body and the world, let yourself go there. One of the teachers that I spent a little time with on my time away is Adyashanti. And I was listening again to some of his things after the seminar I went to. And he was coaching this young woman. And the young woman said that, she'd been on the path for a long time and she had an old habit of disassociating with her body because of trauma. But she'd come a long way and she'd done a lot of work and she was becoming a somatic therapist herself. And she found that, the more she got in her body, the more she was kind of liking the physical world and the material world. And you could hear that there was concern in her voice that maybe I'll lose my spirituality if I go all the way in to the physical. If I let myself connect fully with the body, be fully embodied. And so there's a sense of a little bit of energy hanging out there that just wasn't totally there. Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah. And so he said something really interesting. He said, if you hate your neighbor, let yourself completely hate your neighbor. Because sometimes the wisdom that we hold, the moral compass that we hold, is actually a barrier to our full spirituality. So in other words, that wisdom that we put forth that makes perfect, reasonable sense to us sometimes can stop us from full surrender. But surrendering our spiritual know-how now into the full physical experience is also called for, and that's part of what we mean by embodied spirituality in the divine feminine. Is that part of that spiritual walk is the energy that comes up from the earth and the energy that is embodied. And it's necessary. That's part of the grounding of the spirituality part. So where do we go from here? Service. It's a big part of it, right? Service. And breaking silence. Desmond Tutu, the South African bishop who was a part of healing apartheid, said, "If you are neutral in situations of justice, you have taken the side of the oppressor." And so breaking that silence and just saying, you know what, every day we can just say, if you don't have a specific project you're on right now that's of service, you can just every day say, Spirit, use me. Allow me to be of service today. Allow me to be present to where I am needed most and to bring that beautiful, grounded, divine love that you know so well into this earth that is asking you. In some ways, I would say begging you, calling you to give of that. It doesn't necessarily take a lot of time and effort to be that presence, that healing presence in the world. We can do this together. As we walk this journey of being sacred activists and come together as a full community in this essence, what amazing things we can do in our own community. I know it will be so. I know it is so. And I know more and more and more as we wake up to these aspects of ourselves and marry them together that we can provide a really potent, healing, whole force in the world. As a part of this mystical renaissance, this rebirth, you are needed, you are called, you are key, a part of that team. So thank you for signing up. And I encourage you to follow along. If you didn't get into a study group with us in the book, the discussion questions are in the bulletin every week. You can find a friend, you can journal, but you can stick with the material as well. So let's close out with an affirmation together. And the affirmation is, I stand in the midst of a mystical renaissance as pure love in action. Let's say that together. I stand in the midst of a mystical renaissance as pure love in action. And so it is. It is. I think it is.
Talk so loud. Oh, good. Thank you, thank you, thank you. That was wonderful. You said a lot of things I've never heard before. And I love that. I love that. That's why I come every Sunday morning, because she's always got something new that I don't know or I have forgotten. And that's the real trick. Thank you so much. Thank you. After service today, I'm going to invite you to come and talk to Reverend Kristen. We're considering the board and Reverend Kristen combining the 8 o'clock and the 9:30 service. So we want your input, we want your thoughts. So just stay for just a few minutes after service, and Kristen and the board members that are here will be here to talk about that. Thank you. Now, our prayer chaplains are here to offer you that very special experience of a personal prayer. So if you have a celebration or you have something in your life that you'd like to talk about that's not a celebration, please find one of them. They have on the lavender stoles, and they will be so happy to pray with you. And now let's open our hearts to the consciousness of giving as we align with the universal law of circulation, which is, as we give, so shall we receive. Because in truth, there is no lack and no limitation, because abundance is our true nature. There's a variety of ways that you can give to Unity of Walnut Creek. For credit card donations, you can use PushPay on your smartphone, or you can take one of those yellow envelopes in the seat pocket in front of you if you have a credit card donation. And please remember, we need that CVC code, that 3-digit code on the back of your credit card, because without that, we can't process it. And of course, if you're online, you can use that PushPay or the Donate Live. And if you're giving on an automatic basis, we need that CV card, that CV number too. So please see Shonda in the bookstore to get that set up. And now I invite you to take your tithe and your love offering as we say our blessing together. Divine love, one with me, blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. I am joy-filled and grateful. Thank you.
Everywhere, from stepping on love, we don't care. Somebody tell me what we're gonna do. Even though there's plenty to share, people hungry on the streets, it ain't fair. But you don't think about it until it's you. Now I'm gonna say how I feel, and what I want to say is love's the only thing that's real. I won't tell you what to do, just believe. To the questions in your mind. Love is the answer. Love. It's the answer. If you're looking, you will find. Friends nowhere to be found to help you when you are down, but you know that you're the one to blame. You know what's wrong from what's right. Nobody wins in a fight, but still you play the game. Now I'm gonna say how I feel, and what I want to say is love's the only thing that's real. I won't tell you what to do. Just believe that love's the only thing we have that's true. And the love is the answer. It's the answer to the questions in your mind. Love is the answer. It's the answer. If you're looking, you will find. Love is the answer. It's the only thing that everybody needs. Love is the answer. It's the only thing that makes you truly free.
The answer is love. The answer is
Just take
love.
a look at the wide world. So beautiful things to see. Say,
Go ahead.
oh, share your love with me. Yeah. Love is the answer.
Love.
It's the only thing that makes us truly free. Love is the answer. It's the answer. If you're looking, you will find.
The answer is love.
Love is the answer.
The answer is love.
It's the only
The
thing
answer is
that
love.
everybody needs.
The answer is love.
Love
The
is the
answer is love.
answer.
The answer is love.
It's the only
The
thing
answer
that
is
makes
love.
us truly free.
The answer is love. 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 Oh, we're gonna bless the offering first. All right, we're gonna let the children come in first. Sorry.
We are marching in the light of God. We are marching in the light of God. We are marching, marching, we are marching, marching, we are marching in the light of God. We are marching, marching, we are marching, marching, we are marching in the light of God.
Well, I love that they just marched in the light of love, because one of the speakers at this conference, Dolores Huerta's daughter, said that she never knew how to walk. She only knew how to march. That's all they'd ever done. Let's bless these gifts. We give thanks for the abundance that continues to feed this ministry and to bless the world, because we ourselves are the messengers of the ministry. Thank you, God. Let's bless this offering together. We give thanks for the ever-increasing, unceasing flow of absolute good in our lives now. So it is. And how about we bless the children and the young people and the teachers? Thank you, thank you, thank you. We love you. Did you know that? All right, together. Youth and teachers, you are loved, special, and important. The light of God shines through you. Thank you. So let's join together. You may want to grab a hand nearby and close out with our prayer of protection. And together, the light of God surrounds us, the love of God enfolds us, the power of God protects us, the presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. light and the love and the peace on earth right now. So let your light shine and have fun.